this is Sabina at Cross Keys Crafts. Today's idea for the card, or rather for the design paper, comes from a YouTube video I saw this morning. I can't remember who it was. It's not really important because I'm not really stealing the card idea. But this lady used a pattern paper that had got ladybirds on it. And I was intrigued and I researched the pattern paper because I thought, oh, this is really lovely paper and I wouldn't mind having some ladybird paper. But whilst I was scrolling through Amazon and Etsy, where you can download digital papers, I thought to myself, how much of the ladybird paper do I actually need? How many ladybird cards would I make? And to be honest, I would probably make one or two, and then I would be stuck with the rest of the pad and not know what to use it for. Because to be honest, like many of you, I've got way too many papers. So I thought I'd just make my own ladybird paper. And I will keep it really simple. All I have prepared for that is, I was looking for a little circle die and I found this cog die that cuts out a little circle. Should not put my fingernail in it though. So I've cut two of these and I've got my stick it removable so I can put it on an acrylic block. You don't have to put this on an acrylic block. This is just standard kids fun foam. The colour doesn't really matter. So I'm just stacking these up just to have a little bit more, what shall I say, a bit more depth to them. I hope the fingernail there doesn't matter now. So when I'm stamping it, it doesn't get too close to the acrylic block. And I've also die cut this little die here. It has various flowers because I thought it might be nice to have a flower design just to fill up spaces. I have just cut this once and I'm not even sure that these are all the same size, and they're not. So I think I'll just go for that one and that one just to stack it up. So the bigger one first, and then the smaller one just on top. If you don't have the stick it removable, just use some glue stick. That usually works as well and is easy to remove. So, and I've got here some paper, well, thicker sort of cardstock. No, it's more like a heavyweight paper. And I've got the VersaFine Clair Tulip Red. And all I'm doing is I'm neglecting this at the moment. I just want to do the ladybirds. So I'm basically inking this up like a stamp, making sure I've got plenty of ink on there. And then it's like potato printing at school. I'm going to stamp this all over with dots. I'm going to do it randomly. I'm trying not to do it too symmetrically. And I'm trying to leave some space in between, and then I'll show you how I create this into a ladybird and how I add the flowers. I have covered my whole paper. As you can see, I decided against the flowers. I've gone for a little leaf instead. It's got a bit of it's got the veins of the leaf on the top, so it's not a solid stamp, but I think that's actually quite nice. I decided to go for that because I thought the green would really pop nicely with the red. My original idea for the design of the ladybird was to just draw the head on myself. Just use a pen. I'll just show you that briefly. So I'll just get that out of the way. So I've just got a few samples here. So I would have just gone in with my black pen. I should have tested beforehand, bear with me. So I've chosen a Sharpie now. Any black pen would be fine. I've just taken the other piece away from underneath though, because sometimes Sharpie does bleed a little bit. So I would have just gone in and painted the head, and my idea was then to come in with a white pen to put in some eyes. If you want to, you could add some legs, but I think I would go without for mine. And obviously we need to have the section there in the back and then the dots. That was my idea. And then I thought, rather than drawing all the heads, I probably will be drawing the back there. I thought I could just cut another piece of foam, and I thought to have the curve, yeah, I'm just cutting it out of this piece, and I'm taking one of the smaller circles, I'm aligning this here so that I'm cutting this out like that. Need to be mindful to actually have a piece at the top maybe like this, so that the top of the circle doesn't catch the teeth there. I give that a try. If not, I can always cut it from a fresh piece of foam, and I think that might make it easier because I've got quite a few of the dots there. I've only cut out one layer. I think I'll be okay with that. So as before, I'm inking this up with my black ink, and then I'm placing it on here to create the head. Try not to squash it too much. There you go. That looks quite nice actually. What I have forgotten though at that one is obviously need the feelers, and I've seen in the design when I looked online you can do something like this. I think this Sharpie bleeds a little bit, so I'm sure I will pick another pen. I could cut out little dots maybe and do the stamping with them. I'll have a think about that, but that is sort of my idea. But I just thought when I switched the camera off, I'm going to be cheeky. I think I will only do this with the ladybirds that I do actually need. So when I've decided on my card design and I've cut my piece of paper, I think I will only create the ladybirds on that piece, because if I don't need it all, I'm colouring or painting ladybirds needlessly. So I will switch the camera off. I've got a few other chores. I might even be coming back to this on another day. For you it will only be a few seconds. It is a few days later, and I just want to quickly pop in to show you my finished sheet. I did actually complete the whole sheet because I had the time, and I made it a little bit easier for me. I didn't have to draw all the little dots. Let me just zoom in so you can see what I've done. I'm hoping it's focusing. I have actually found a die in my stash, which is this little cupcake die, and it had the little dots here, so I die cut those, and I also stuck those on my acrylic block. They're a bit wonky, but I quite like the look of that. So that helped me not to have to draw all the little dots. If you don't have that, you maybe have a dotting tool that you could dab onto your ink pad and then dab all those. That would be an option as well. And I just used my, zooming out again, this pen here. It's a fine liner. I got this from Clinton a few months ago. So a kitty cat. They were only 99p then. It's a gel pen, and I drew the feelers with them, and I did the sort of swirly thing. I actually started on the head and did this little swirl there, and I also drew this little line there, a bit in a curve, which I think gives quite a good look, and I'm really pleased with this piece now. I have picked two cards I would like to create with this. First of all, as you can see, this side is a little bit busier than this one. I've got more open areas, so I think I will use this for one card and this for another. As I said, I have chosen sort of two cards that I would quickly like to create from this two fun folds. If I find when I cut my pieces that this is a little bit too bare, I can always stamp something in between, like I thought maybe like a little black heart or something. I do have a few specks on the piece. That was when I put my fingernail into the onto the stamp block. I wasn't quite mindful of that, but it's okay. It'll be a homemade card. So I will clear my table. I will recharge my phone, and then I'll show you the quick fun folds. Before I show you how I cut the card base for the first card, I just wanted to show you this. I have actually found in my stash a Ladybird die. but this one just cuts it in one piece. So when I want to do some paper piecing, I have to cut it at least twice. And I just thought, whilst I was doing this off camera, maybe some of you don't know how paper piecing works. So I have cut it in black cardstock and in red cardstock. I have chopped the head and the legs of the red piece, and I have used some, you might just be able to see that, I've used some red tape and I've put a strip in between. I cut this bit out though, to stick this on the bottom, sorry, to stick the red one on top of the black one. Reason being is I've got this glue now exposed that I can put these black pieces in, so the dots and the eyes. The eyes though, they are obviously a layer below, and I actually just have put some clear tape on there. You don't have to use adhesive tape, you can just use paper underneath one layer, but I wanted the black dots to sit in the red layer, not underneath. So what I need to do now is, oh, by the way, I have used my shimmer pen for the eyes because I wanted them to be set off from the black head there. And then what you do is, ideally you have a pickup tool and you set these pieces back where they belong. And that is easy when you've got the glue exposed. You can do this on the piece that you're gluing the piece on afterwards, so I could have just put this down on the card base, or I'm going to put it on a tag, put glue sort of underneath, have the liquid glue exposed and then put it in. But I find it a little bit easier because then I can maneuver this around. It's just important to remember which pieces go where, and with the red tape I don't really have a lot of wriggle room if I do get it wrong, but it doesn't have to be perfect. In this case I just push it into place and that should be okay. So that's my little tip. But these pickup tools, I've got it linked in the description box, is really handy for that. So let me just lift it up, especially against the light, so you can see the shimmer there on the eyes, and you can see that the glue is a little bit, glue tape is a little bit exposed here because it doesn't quite fit, but I'm okay with that. If not, I could always put some glossy accents on it afterwards, but I think it's fine. So all I need to do then is to stick the whole thing down. The other thing I thought I used for this card, you'll see in a moment why, is a tag die. Just because I have it, you don't need tag dies. You can just cut this. This is from a leftover piece anyway. I've cut 2 of these. Just to make it a little bit sturdier, but you can just cut it straight, cut the corners nicely. Maybe you have got a corner rounder or fancy scissors, and then you can just use an ordinary hole punch for the hole at the top. You don't need this. So for the card base, I'll show you which card we're making. Let me zoom out a little bit, because I made a trial run the other day, but I wasn't happy with this, so I thought I'd delete the video and I just used the card idea for this video, and the pattern paper I created, I'll record a different video for that. So what this is actually is like a Z fold card, but because I don't want to use 3 panels of my lovely pattern paper, I thought if I glue this shut as a pocket, I only need 2 pieces here, and I want a little bit exposed here, and then the rest can be white for me to write on. That was my idea. So, and this one is really easily created. You just take an A4 sheet. Let's see if I can move this so you can see the whole. So you take the full width, which is 11 and 5/8, I think. I've cut it down a little bit afterwards, and you see in a moment why. And I have scored this at 3 7/8 and 7 3/4. And after I folded and burnished it, I had a little bit of overhang here, really just a slither. Still here, actually I can show you how much is left. so I just trimmed that off afterwards. I find that easier than cutting it to length, and then maybe you don't have enough. So, and you open up this card. Let me just see which way around. Yeah. So this is a mountain fold. This is a valley fold. And we are cutting, sorry, we're marking on this panel here. We're marking this at 2.5 inches. You can have a different height. I like 2.5 inches. And I am then cutting from that score line, the top here, to that mark here. So you might see if I can put this in here. So what I like to do is I like to use my what's it called, the finger protector here, to hold the piece in place. You might have to maneuver it a little bit if it catches at the top. So you don't have to use that in a guillotine. You can do that. So you have to move it down. You can't see this fully. I do apologize for that. You can just use a craft knife and a metal ruler, or your trimmer if you've got a trimming board. So just checking here that this is in the correct place and the bottom, and then I can cut this, and then I get this shape. So I then need to cut my Ladybird paper. I've already cut this to a width of 3 5/8. Could have a little bit more, but I quite a little bit of a frame. So I now need to mimic the sort of angle we have here. So what I'm doing at first is I'm turning this over, because I've just turned this one over, and I'm going to hold this here. Oh, sorry, a bit slow there. I actually need to move it up twice as much as I want this frame to be. So if I want the frame to be, I'm not even sure what that is, 1/8, I need to move this up like about 1/4. Yeah, and then I'm turning this over, and I'm going to mark this with a pencil. So, and I'm going to cut that off. I will actually move the pencil line a little bit to the right hand side so that I'm cutting in the right place, because the pencil line was obviously sitting next to the line where I wanted to cut. Got something there. So that gives me the bottom piece here. So then I want this sort of triangle, but a little bit lower, so that the actual frame gets hidden there a little bit. So I can push this down here a little bit. I know I will have plenty for the inside, I think, anyway. So again, I'm holding this in place, and again I'm marking on the back. There might be a way of working it out otherwise, but I find this the quickest way. So I'm going to cut that as well, and then the last piece I might actually mark that on the front. So I will actually move that up a little bit, not down, and then I can mark it on the front. So am I doing this right? Yeah, I will actually have to cut from that corner down here at that angle. So I can actually line it up with the top. I can cut it at the front. You can have it a little bit lower, actually. You can have a little bit more. I might actually do that, and I'll show you that in a second after I've cut the middle piece. Yeah, this is the leftover piece. So it's really up to you how much of that you want, or how much you want for the writing. I would definitely cut it a little bit shorter, so I would probably cut just along here. but I would like to keep the same angle, so when I place it into my score tool here, I will make sure that this is straight. I think that gives a good look. So I think I'm just eyeballing this now. No, I tell you what, if I align it this way, I know that I've got it straight because I can align this here. So, and I think, yeah, so you've got a bit of overlap here, but I think that gives a nice enough space to write it, and it's still slightly hidden. So I've got this little strip spare, and I've still got this sheet here, the rest of the sheet. So I'm going to glue these panels down, and then I'll show you how we create the pocket. One thing I need to mention is I removed or erased the pencil lines before I stuck this down because I'm working on fairly thin white cardstock. And then the other thing I need to say is I'm working here on some green cardstock, so I decided to cut a white panel here, which is the same width as this piece, so 3 5/8, and it is, let me just check again, 5 3/4 in height. So it has got a little frame, so I think that gives a slightly nicer look. But if you're working on a white card base, you won't be needing this. So I can go in here. Trying to get this even. Bit of a crease in the corner there, but sometimes the cardstock gets delivered like that. This was a scrap from my desk anyway. So all we need to do now then is to create the pocket. So I'm just putting some wet glue here on this side and at the bottom. You can use some adhesive tape if you want to, but I think this will give us a good look. Open it up a little bit, and then we'll have to leave that to dry a moment, but then we've got this pocket. I've already put my Ladybird onto the tag. I'll put it on the top so it won't catch too much, but we've got quite a bit of space there. Just sure it doesn't disappear. I will pick some twine, I think, to put on the top, and I'm also thinking about a little sentiment for the bottom. I didn't know until my wedding that it's not a British thing that ladybirds bring luck, but it is a German thing. So I'll have a look if I've actually got a German sentiment stamp that says viel Glück. I'll have a look. But otherwise, I think this is a pretty card and makes good use of my Ladybird paper. I think this video is fairly long so far, and I wanted to create really shorter videos as of late because the longer videos are too difficult for my laptop to process. So I think for the second bit here, I'm going to create a separate video, which I may or may not post on the same day. So if you would like to see that, please subscribe to my channel. If you like this card here, you might want to give me a thumbs up, and I will just put a little video snippet at the end of the final version of this card, and you'll find in the description box a link to part 2 for the second card.